A quarter of the UK's population will be under some sort of local lockdown by this weekend after new restrictions were announced for 2 million more people in northern England. The Health Secretary for England, Matt Hancock, said the disease was spreading fast in some areas and was highly localised. He described the new rules as challenging but necessary. The latest areas affected from Saturday are Liverpool City Region, Warrington, Hartlepool and Middlesbrough. An average area in England has 28 cases per 100,000, but in Knowsley, for example, there are 262 cases per 100,000 people there. The new restrictions mean it will be against the law to mix with other households, whether you're at home, in your garden or in a pub or a cafe. Flout those rules and you could be fined. There's also guidance which says you're advised not to mix with other households in pub gardens, parks or at sporting events. Our special correspondent Ed Thomas is in Liverpool for us tonight. Ed.
Yeah, tonight, Sophie, a clearer picture is emerging across the UK. Increasingly, large parts of the north of England are coming under tighter and tighter restrictions. Today, people here were told they were next. No surprises, though, because for 48 hours, Liverpool has waited to hear what is going to happen to stop this spread and rise of coronavirus cases. The mood music has changed. New coronavirus laws are coming to Merseyside. Households will be banned from mixing inside pubs and restaurants.
I lost my husband last year. I'm now faced with the possibility of losing my home and my business.
Is that close for you?
It could get that close.
Anna runs an independent pub. She's invested hundreds of thousands of pounds in this business.
Say we get a group of 4, 5, 6 people in, we've now got to ask them to show proof of where they all live as well.
But do you understand cases are rising and people are worried?
Absolutely, and we all have to take a great deal of responsibility, but I think that if you look at the hospitality sector in general, we are not responsible for the rises in cases.
And this is an industry worth billions of pounds to the Liverpool City Region. The leisure, creative and cultural sectors support 50,000 jobs here.
We are looking at a scale of job losses in Liverpool not seen since the 80s.
Some worry these new rules will have a devastating effect.
So we've taken 20 years to build our city and regenerate our city, and we're just throwing that away. Why? Nobody has told me what the end game is here.
The fear is that coronavirus cases keep on rising. Politicians here call these new rules a step in the right direction, desperate to bring down cases. Did you call for all pubs and bars to be shut?
That was something that was discussed on Monday night when we met with the Chief Medical Officer. Well, it depends on what the science tells us. If the science says that we have to go further, we will go further and we will support further measures. But we want to see the evidence, and it's no good just us guessing on what might be the right restrictions.
There's also a call for compensation here to avoid this, to keep restaurants open, to save jobs.
I used to work in the hospitality industry. I mean, that's been decimated by this.
Rob lost his job during lockdown. He's now 55 and out of work.
Are you worried for the future, where it's all going to end?
At the moment, I think the future's bleak. As regards jobs, industries, and I don't think we've seen the worst of it yet.
Jobs are at risk, but so too are lives, as coronavirus cases keep on rising across Merseyside.
It's being able to create an environment that's warm, welcoming, makes people feel safe, makes people have fun.
Chelsea only opened this restaurant 2 weeks ago. She supports these new rules.
The restrictions are in place, but it's not to be restricted by them as such. It's to move with them, to go hand in hand and just build it into the great work that people are doing anyway.
But there is a warning here tonight. If coronavirus cases can't be controlled, tougher restrictions could still come in. Ed Thomas, BBC News, Liverpool.
Middlesbrough is another area where tighter restrictions are being brought in on Saturday. Fiona Trott is there, and the reaction?
Well, councils here wanted tougher measures, but they didn't want them to go this far. The area covered by these tougher restrictions is widening already here in the northeast of England. Around 2 million people are adjusting to the new rules. Now, after midnight on Friday, around 250,000 more will be joining them. Now, Middlesbrough and Middlesbrough and Hartlepool councils did ask for these measures, but they wanted a household-only ban, and that was based on local data, which suggested in September around 80% of cases which were positive were people who've been exposed to the virus at a home. What Hartlepool and Middlesbrough councils were concerned about was that any measures that went beyond that in this part of the UK, which has some of the most deprived areas, it would be damaging for the local economy and for people's mental health. But what today's announcement has shown is that local authorities do not have the power to cherry pick what measures they want. Central government has announced a support package of £7 million, but the mayor here, Andy Preston, has said today, we defy the government and do not accept these measures.
Fiona, thank you. Meanwhile, in Northern Ireland, hospitality venues in Londonderry and Strabane are to be placed under new coronavirus restrictions. Restaurants will only be able to offer takeaway and outdoor dining, and people will be urged to limit their use of public transport and work from home if possible. Households across Northern Ireland are already barred from mixing indoors in private homes. New coronavirus restrictions came into force for 4 more council areas in North Wales this evening. People living in Conwy, Denbighshire, Flintshire and Wrexham now cannot leave or enter the areas without a reasonable excuse such as work or education. The restrictions, the same as those seen in most of South Wales, means another 500,000 people in Wales are now living under tighter measures. From Saturday, people travelling to the UK from Turkey and Poland will have to self-isolate for 14 days on arrival. The Caribbean islands of Bonaire, St Eustatius and Saba have also been added to the quarantine list. The Transport Secretary Grant Shapps said people who repeatedly fail to comply with quarantine regulations could now be fined up to a maximum of £10,000. The government is using emergency powers under the Coronavirus Act to require schools in England to provide the same lessons online to pupils self-isolating at home as those provided in the classroom. It comes after official figures showed 1 in 6 secondary schools in England were partially closed to some pupils. The government says it's simply formalising pupils' right to remote learning. Now, there are calls tonight for the MP Margaret Ferrier to resign after she admitted travelling by train from Scotland to London after developing COVID symptoms and then returning home the next day after testing positive. The First Minister, Nicola Sturgeon, said it was utterly indefensible, and Margaret Ferrier has tonight been suspended from the SNP. Our political correspondent Nick Eardley is in Westminster. Nick.
Sophie, there is real anger at Westminster about Margaret Ferrier's actions. One person here has been told to self-isolate as a close contact. Ms Ferrier has been thrown out of her party and she's facing calls now to stand down as an MP, including from some in the SNP.
I'd like to start by paying tribute to all NHS key workers.
The SNP's Margaret Ferrier in Parliament on Monday. She was speaking in a debate on coronavirus, but tonight she's been suspended by her party and is facing calls to quit Parliament for breaking the rules around COVID. On Saturday, Ms Ferrier showed symptoms and took a test in Scotland. She should have self-isolated, but on Monday she travelled to London saying she felt better. On Monday evening in Westminster, her result came back positive, and on Tuesday morning, despite being required by law to self-isolate, she travelled back to the west of Scotland on a train. Tonight, Ms Ferrier tweeted a statement in which she said, "I apologise unreservedly for breaching COVID-19 restrictions by travelling this week when I shouldn't have. There is no excuse for my actions." The SNP say they only found out Ms Ferrier had travelled whilst positive today, and tonight she was suspended by the party. Scotland's First Minister, Nicola Sturgeon, was clearly furious, tweeting, "This is utterly indefensible. It's hard to express just how angry I feel on behalf of people across the country, making hard sacrifices every day to help beat COVID. One SNP MP said she should resign.
I certainly think her position is untenable, to be honest, because
So you think she should resign?
We're asking people to follow very, very strict public health guidance, and if a Member of Parliament can't do that, I think they've got to reflect upon their position.
There is disbelief at Westminster, not only that an MP would travel here after showing symptoms, but that they would then travel back to another part of the country knowing they had the virus, especially when there's a legal requirement to self-isolate after a positive test. Some MPs now believe Margaret Ferrier's position in Parliament is untenable. One SNP MP told me tonight that she'd been dangerous, stupid and selfish. Ms Ferrier's office didn't respond to those comments tonight, but a few months ago she was highly critical of Boris Johnson's aide Dominic Cummings when he travelled to the north of England during lockdown.
Dominic Cummings did undermine public trust in lockdown rules.
What's your reaction? The Scottish Conservative leader said she should stand down.
It is so reckless, it undermines the whole messaging of the Scottish Government, the UK Government, and it has put people at risk, travelling hundreds of miles with symptoms and then with a COVID test result. At every turn, there was an opportunity for Margaret Ferrier to minimise the risk to others, and she ignored that, so she has to go.
Police Scotland said tonight that they were looking into the circumstances, and Ms Ferrier faces pressure to quit Parliament altogether. Nick Earley, BBC News, Westminster.